Daniel had always been fascinated by his family history. So when he received word that he had inherited his great-uncle's estate, a grand, old house on the outskirts of town, he was intrigued. The house was over a century old, steeped in mystery, and had been the subject of many whispered rumors in the family. They called it the Midnight House because strange things were said to happen only after midnight. On his first visit, Daniel arrived at dusk, the house standing tall and ominous against the darkening sky. It had high, arched windows, ivy creeping up its walls, and an air of haunting beauty. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by the scent of aged wood and the quiet murmur of the past. The rooms were filled with antique furniture, each piece a relic of his ancestors. The caretaker, an elderly man named Thomas, gave him a brief tour. "They say the house holds memories," Thomas remarked with a cryptic smile. "If you stay here long enough, you might even see them." That night, Daniel retired to his room, feeling a mixture of excitement and unease. Midnight came, and with it, an unnatural silence. Just as he was drifting off, he heard faint whispers, like distant conversations echoing through the hallways. Sitting up, he strained to listen, but the whispers faded as quickly as they had come. The following night, the whispers returned. This time, they were clearer. He could make out fragments of words, names, pleas, arguments. It felt as though the walls themselves were speaking, sharing secrets trapped within their stones. Determined to uncover the source, Daniel began exploring the house at night. He wandered through shadowed corridors, each creak of the floorboards amplifying his anticipation. In the library, he found an old journal belonging to his great-uncle. The entries were strange, detailing encounters with guests who would visit him each night. "These guests are not of this world," one entry read. "They come at midnight, drawn to the memories of this house." The more Daniel read, the more he felt as if he were stepping into his great-uncle's shoes, reliving the experiences documented within the pages. He felt an inexplicable pull, as if the house was reaching out to him, inviting him deeper into its mysteries. On the third night, the midnight whispers grew louder, their voices urgent and filled with emotion. Daniel found himself compelled to follow them, his footsteps guided by the invisible threads of the past. The whispers led him to a hidden door behind a tapestry in the parlor, one he hadn't noticed before. Behind the door was a narrow staircase, winding down into the darkness. Daniel descended cautiously, each step taking him further from the world he knew. At the bottom, he found himself in an old stone chamber, lit by flickering candlelight. In the center stood a mirror framed in ornate silver, its surface strangely dark. As Daniel approached the mirror, he felt a chill run down his spine. His reflection stared back at him, but something was off. His eyes, normally blue, appeared dark and shadowed. Slowly, his reflection began to change, morphing into the face of a stranger. Suddenly, he was pulled into a vision. He saw the house as it had been 100 years ago, filled with people dressed in vintage clothing. They laughed, danced, and whispered secrets, their voices mingling in a symphony of the past. But as the clock struck midnight, their expressions turned solemn, their eyes fixed on him. The vision shifted, and he saw his great-uncle standing in the same chamber, looking into the same mirror, haunted by the same figures. He understood now. These were the guests who came at midnight, souls trapped in time, unable to leave the house. As the vision faded, Daniel found himself back in the present, staring at his own reflection. The faces of the guests lingered behind him, their expressions pleading, as if asking him to release them from their spectral prison. Determined to help, Daniel reached out and touched the mirror's surface. A cold shock jolted through him, and suddenly, the faces in the mirror began to dissipate, their features softening until they faded into shadows. The room grew silent, and a weight lifted from the air. When he returned upstairs, the house felt different, lighter somehow. The midnight whispers had ceased, and the house seemed at peace for the first time in decades. He realized that by acknowledging the spirits of the past, he had freed them, allowing them to finally rest. The next morning, Daniel packed his belongings, feeling as though he had fulfilled his purpose. As he locked the door, he glanced back at the house, noticing a faint glow in the window. He knew he would always carry the memory of the midnight house and the echoes of those who had once called it home.